Good afternoon. Welcome to the White House, and those of you viewing online, welcome as well. My name is Aaron Hannigan, and I work here in the Office of Public Engagement. I wanted to be the first to welcome all of you, and especially thank our champions of change who are here to honor today, who are innovators in infrastructure. And if we can just start with a round of applause for all of our champions. We're looking forward to a great event with our champions today. I want to encourage everyone here today in the audience and watching online to learn more about the great work and leadership of our champions by going to www.whitehouse.gov/champions. You can learn more about them and their work on that website. Now, before we begin our discussion with our champions, we have a few special guests. First up is my boss, John Carson. John is Deputy Assistant to the President and the Director of the Office of Public Engagement here at the White House. John?
Thank you, Aaron, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the White House. I just want to start by telling you a little bit about the idea behind the Champions of Change program, and then I have an ask for everyone watching online, everyone here in the audience, and a special ask for our champions here today. You know, here in Washington, D.C., there's so many issues that we're dealing with and so many arguments and debates over the issues that this country's faced with. But what this president knows and this White House knows is that no matter what's going on here in Washington, D.C., all across this country, there are millions of people making a real difference in their communities, making their communities' lives better, being champions of change. And so what we try to do every week is honor those people, bring them here to the White House, and help tell their story about the change they're making in their community. We've had some interesting groups before. One of my favorites, we had a group of chefs who've partnered with local school districts to bring the ideas of Let's Move to a school cafeteria near them. We've had people who are tackling domestic violence in their communities. But I have to tell you, I'm personally so excited about our Champions of Change who are working on innovation through infrastructure. I'm a civil engineer by training, so I saw we have a mayor here who's been working on some sewage treatment plants, something I get excited about. Probably not everyone does. But also, so many of us in this administration saw the Recovery Act from start to these incredible stories of what's happening in communities. And one thing that is of no surprise to us, and I'm sure to all of you, is that where we had the biggest impact with the Recovery Act was where we had local leaders, local champions of change like all of you here who were able to maximize those dollars, bring people into the process like so many of you did. So that gets me to my ask for all of you. The real goal here, beyond highlighting the great things that are happening, is to spread the word, to shine a light on examples that others can follow and others can say, if it can be done here, we can do this in our community. So my ask to all of you is to tell this story. If you're online, tweet about it, write about it, blog about it, pull someone aside at the grocery store tomorrow and tell them about it. If you're here in the audience, help tell your own story. If you want to tweet me about it, I'm at JohnCarson44. I'll be tweeting about this all afternoon. But really, to our champions here, what we see so often is that sometimes those local heroes, those local leaders, are the ones who are most reticent to tell their own story, to be that example. But I ask all of you to do so. Help let your local media know about it. Tell that story, because I will tell you, we have seen so many stories of, as we've highlighted champions, others following their lead, learning from what you did, and really spreading the word. So thank you for everything you've done. And now I have the great honor to introduce someone who I will tell you is a champion of change here inside this government, someone who believes in exactly what you are doing, who believes in what a partnership with the federal government can do at the local level, our Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, John, and thanks to all of you for being in Washington. Thanks for coming to Washington. Thanks for allowing us to highlight the great work that you're all doing. 3 years ago, when I came to this job, and within 30 days of the president, after he was sworn in, signed into law a program called the Economic Recovery, the stimulus bill. And in that bill was $48 billion. And I really came here to say thank you to those that are gathered that benefited and used that money effectively to put friends and neighbors to work, but to others of you that are gathered here too, for the work that you do day in and day out, to try and figure out ways how we get this economy moving, how do we get people back to work. And what we're proudest of is that that $48 billion was spent within 2 years on 15,000 projects that put 65,000 friends and neighbors to work. Now, there's no dispute about that. The other thing that's great about the $48 billion on 15,000 projects that put 65,000 people to work, not one bad story. No earmarks, no boondoggles, no sweetheart deals, no bad stories. That's because of the folks that received the money. They knew how to spend it, they spent it correctly, and they put people to work on projects that needed doing in the community. And that happened all over America. Now, I know prior to the last election, there were a lot of 30-second commercials run by people who didn't know what they were talking about, saying the stimulus didn't work. That was baloney when it came to the transportation stimulus. It worked. It put people to work. We have some great examples of it here. And it happened all across the government, not just at DOT, but in every agency of government, every department, every cabinet secretary had an opportunity with resources, but we could not have done it without our partners. The way that we're successful is not by shoveling money out around the country, it's by partnering with folks that are gathered here today that make a difference, that have creative ideas, that want to get people back to work, and that's what we're celebrating here today, and that's what we're highlighting here today. This is a success story about good ideas coming from the communities, not from Washington, D.C., not from President Obama, not from Ray LaHood, from the communities. And that's really what this is all about. So I couldn't be prouder. And I was on Capitol Hill today. I was before the Senate Budget Committee today talking about the President's big vision for transportation that we just rolled out, our budget, and we have a pay for it. But I was talking about, somebody said, how do you really make this work to put people to work? And I talked about what we're celebrating here. I talked about what we're highlighting here. I talked about how the $48 billion was spent correctly. So the work that we do in government cannot be done unless we have great partners. Some of our partners are governors. Some of our partners are mayors. Some of our partners are people that are gathered here. People who are running programs. People who know what the needs are. People who know how to create jobs, given the resources to do it. And so this program worked. And for us to highlight it here today, I think is quite extraordinary. And we have been able to use it now as an example of this is what will happen if the Congress were to pass a transportation bill. We've gone 3.5 years beyond the last bill. We need for Congress to pass a bill that reflects the values of people in the country when it comes to transportation, which means roads and bridges, but it also means transit programs, buses, light rail, streetcars, what people in communities have been working on to deliver people around their community, and also high-speed rail, by the way, which I argued for very vociferously before the Senate Budget Committee today against a few Republicans who don't think it's quite a good use of our money. But the people in the country do, just like they believe that what all of you have done is a good use of taxpayer dollars matched with great skill, great ingenuity, great creativity about how to put friends and neighbors to work in communities. That's what we want to highlight today, and I hope you'll carry that message back to say that we know that if we make investments in infrastructure, we make investments in American workers. American workers building America's infrastructure. American workers putting hard-earned tax dollars to good use. So I'm proud of what we've done. But we could not have done it without those of you gathered, seated out there, and most importantly, without the good work that all of you do. So I applaud you. Keep it up, keep it going, carry the message, and we'll continue to be successful. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Next up, we have the Deputy Administrator from the EPA, Bob Percisepi, who will make a few remarks and introduce all of our wonderful champions here today.
There are very few people more enthusiastic about the nation's infrastructure than Secretary LaHood, I can tell you that. I've been subjected to some of that enthusiasm on many occasions. I want to add my voice to the congratulations and the thanks to all the partners who are here today. And I think it goes without saying, but it certainly doesn't go without repeating appropriately the nature of a partnership in getting the nation's infrastructure to where it needs to be. And we have so much work to do and so many people who are willing to do it that our celebration of the work that's going on is vitally important. I would also say that there's no doubt in my mind that the country's built on the strength of its infrastructure, and the foundation of our economy and of jobs is vitally important. And I couldn't be happier and prouder to be here today. EPA plays a small role in this, working with local governments and state governments on water infrastructure, cleaning land so that land is available for development through cleanup and brownfields programs. Our water and wastewater infrastructure program is now a national bank with 50 branch offices that's up over $100 billion together. That is now making repayments and going into working on the local infrastructure. We're happy to be part of that. We know water infrastructure is a critical element for health as well as economic development. So let me go right to the introductions and the overview of the champions that are here today. Justin Augustine is the Chief Executive Officer of the Regional Transit Authority in New Orleans, Louisiana, and is responsible for the vision and creation of the Loyola Avenue streetcar expansion. This $45 million investment has attracted new investment along Loyola Avenue, totaling $1.2 billion. Amber Benson led the Broadband Incentives Program High-Speed Mobile Broadband Upgrade Project in West Virginia, PCS Alliance, LC, and Telos Wireless. From application to implementation and reporting, Amber managed the $3.3 million investment that allowed the company to upgrade voice-only cell sites in rural areas of West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania to high-speed mobile broadband. Paulson Chaco is the director of the Navajo Division of Transportation, occupying a cabinet-level position to the President of the Navajo Nation, and is utilizing a $31 million investment to improve safety on US 491 in New Mexico. Paulson is responsible for all major aspects of planning, development, advocacy, and implementation of roads and the transportation programs and services on the Navajo Nation. Dr. Jana Davis is the Associate Executive Director and Chief Scientist for the Chesapeake Bay Trust. She oversees a number of grant programs for the Trust, including a new partnership with the EPA and the Maryland Department of Natural Resources to fund Green Street projects, including the one in Edmondson, Maryland, with the aid of funds from the Recovery Act. Joe Fredoso is President and CEO of MCNC, which is an independent, nonprofit corporation in its mission to provide advanced intranet and internet networking services to community anchor institutions in North Carolina. With the aid of Recovery Act, MCNC is expanding broadband infrastructure through a Department of Commerce grant and matching private funds. You can see the pattern here. Matching funds, leveraging, providing services to different parts of the country. Philip Guerin has worked for the city of Worcester, Massachusetts for the past 28 years and is currently Director of Environmental Systems for the Department of Public Works and Parks. Under Philip's leadership and others in the community and Recovery Act funds, 200,000 residents in Worcester, Massachusetts are able to get clean drinking water due to the ability to bring solar photovoltaic power to the water filtration plant. Talk about an integration of a number of different infrastructures there. Janelle Jessen is the Accounting and Office Manager for Venture Communications Cooperative in Highmore, South Dakota. After receiving a $5.2 million investment from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to implement a fiber-to-the-premise project in an underserved area of South Dakota, Janelle's hard work ensured 865 rural subscribers will have new and improved broadband service. Anybody here try to live a day without broadband service these days? It's hard to imagine how much that means to people these days to get that kind of service to your home. Mayor Dave Norris of West Monroe, Louisiana, has helped ensure a clean and sustainable water source for his city of 13,000 residents and surrounding communities. West Monroe designed and just recently completed construction of a recycling plant that has the capacity to recycle up to 10 million gallons per day of effluent from their wastewater treatment plant into water. Under Norris's leadership and through his work with their local industry, they have found a cost-effective method to protect both jobs and the environment. Henry Parahia is the Chief Bridge Officer of the New York City Department of Transportation. My hometown, I live in Brooklyn, is a position, and I have a bridge that's right near me, a position he has held since 1999. He is responsible for the planning and administration of all aspects of design, construction, and maintenance of 787 city-owned bridges and tunnels, including my favorite one, the Brooklyn Bridge. This $175 million project included the rehabilitation of 8 vehicular bridges, 1 pedestrian bridge, and 1 parking field to provide improved commuter access to the Staten Island Ferry Terminal for 60,000 daily riders. Sam E. Swan is the project manager for the DFW Connector Project and is responsible for overseeing and managing procurement, design, construction. At $260 million, the DFW Connector represents the single largest IRA highway investment. The project is 50% complete and 6 to 12 months ahead of schedule due to field and technology innovations, including electronic data collection. Don Welch is the president and CEO of Merit Network Incorporated. Merit Network Incorporated, a nonprofit corporation governed by Michigan's public universities, which owns and operates America's longest-running regional research and education network. Merit's REACH, Michigan Middle Mile Collective project, which is funded by 2 Recovery Act broadband grants and will build over 2,287 miles of open access advanced fiber optic network through rural and underserved communities in Michigan's lower and upper peninsulas. Now we'll have a chance to hear from each of our champions about their work and get our first panel started. But let's have a round of applause for the work that all of these folks have been doing. I think the key point to all of those accomplishments is the fact that they are serving many different kinds of communities in the country, from New York to North Dakota. They are leveraging funds and investment across the country, and they're really moving us forward on infrastructure. So I'm honored to be here with all of you today.
Now for our first panel, we're excited to hear from Danny Werfel. Danny will be moderating this panel. He is the Federal Controller at OMB. So Danny.
Thank you. It's an honor to be a part of this event. 3 years ago this week, the President signed the Recovery Act into law. I had the privilege of working very closely and coordinating a lot of the federal government's efforts on the implementation of the Recovery Act. and through that process have gotten to meet, talk to on the phone, and interact with people all over the country as we worked on these issues together. I think it's been stated well so far in the remarks that that the Recovery Act, has been enormously successful in a lot of different ways. There's often debates, and those debates occur at the macro discussions of how many jobs were created or impact on GDP and the unemployment rate. Those are important debates to happen. We believe that there are independent entities such as the Congressional Budget Office and a slew of different independent economists from all stripes that point to very critical macroeconomic indicators that show the success of the Recovery Act. But one of the reasons I think we're having this event today is because it's really important to push past some of those macro numbers and really understand what's happening at the local level. What's the impact that the Recovery Act, federal programs, state and local programs, what impact is this dollar having, these dollars having to people and to communities? And to do that, it takes time to understand what's happening. You have to unpack it. You have to pull back the onion layers and talk to people, do case studies and investigate. And that's something that we've been working with in the administration, is to try to push past the macro numbers and understand what's happening. Because what's happening at the local level is not just important to understand the impact of the dollars and to make sure there's a good understanding of the impact of the Recovery Act. It's helpful because it generates understanding of how programs work, best practice sharing, and collaboration across different types of programs and across the United States. And so this event is an opportunity to do some pulling back of the onion layer, to unpack some of these successes, and to let people in this room and beyond start to understand some of the challenges and opportunities that existed in your local communities and how the Recovery Act was helpful. Our panel today has been introduced: Justin Augustine from the New Orleans Regional Transit Authority, Paulson Chaka from the Navajo Nation Division of Transportation in New Mexico, Jana Davis from the Chesapeake Bay Trust, Mayor Dave Norris from the City of West Monroe, Louisiana, Henry Pariah from the New York City Department of Transportation, and Sam Swan, who manages the DFW Connector Project in Texas. Let me turn to them and get their perspectives on the work of the Recovery Act. Let me start with Justin. Justin, can you tell us how the New Orleans Streetcar Project has contributed to economic development in New Orleans, both now and in the future?
Absolutely, Danny. Thank you. Well, as y'all are aware, New Orleans was hit with a devastating hurricane in 2005. So there's two things we had to do. Number one, we had to bring transportation back to the community, and we had to use transportation as an economic catalyst. Let me focus on the economics of the transportation investment. Today, the Loyola Corridor, which is the newest of the 5 phases of the New Orleans Regional Transit Authority streetcar expansion program, is generating $2.7 billion of economic investments. $1.3 billion of the $2.7 billion is within 3 blocks of that transit corridor. And we feel, at least at a minimum, $185 million of those investments are a direct result of that streetcar investment. Not only is it bringing a new economic vitality to downtown New Orleans, but it is generating a new, strong, livable neighborhood called the South Market District. Today, it is estimated that an additional 2,300 square feet of retail space will be developed. An additional 2,400 hotel rooms will be joining the great city, the city of New Orleans. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, why is that important? It means jobs creations. It means the opportunity to put our people back to work. It means the opportunity to take a transit investment and to have private investment leverage to create a new dynamic, vital, bursting community that was never there before. So we're very, very proud of that, Danny. And I want to thank you for assisting us with that.
Thank you, Justin. I think the example of the New Orleans Streetcar Project is really a a great example of economic stimulus. The investment that was made from the federal dollars was leveraged effectively, and that leveraging not only created jobs, which was the underlying purpose of the Recovery Act, but had additional benefits in terms of the impact it's having on community and affecting the citizens in the area. It's really a multidimensional impact, and I think the New Orleans project exemplifies that, and I thank you for your leadership in stewarding those dollars to the success that we're seeing. Let's turn over to Paulson Chaka. Paulson, I understand that your project, which includes $31 million of investment on U.S. Highway 491, will not only significantly improve safety concerns, but it has also generated jobs. Can you talk about how you approached the project and how you made sure that job growth was a priority?
Thank you, Danny, and I want to thank the Obama administration for allowing me the opportunity to bring into the national forefront the inequity of road and infrastructure dollars on Indian country. And to address your question, yes, the 491 project basically allowed us to build a road in Indian country and also in the state of New Mexico, bringing in approximately 535 jobs, direct jobs. And this equates to an economic that provides good economic development for our communities. It allowed for the development of a road projects that at one time was 3 times the national average in crashes on US 491. So that basically addressed those issues.
Thank you, Paulson. Again, I think there's a similar theme here of how infrastructure investments, if done right, have a huge win-win, putting people back to work, but also creating improvement to roads and to other infrastructure that we as citizens rely on to live our daily lives and to promote our communities. So I thank you for sharing your story with us. Janet Davis. Janet, in your role with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, you worked with the EPA to leverage Recovery Act funds to address stormwater issues and make streets more accessible to pedestrians in Edmonston, Maryland. And you did this all using green techniques. Can you share with us how you've been able to overcome challenges of improving aging infrastructure in a sustainable way?
Sure. Can I?
Oh, yeah, here. Okay.
Sure. So again, I'd like to echo some of the other panelists. Thanks for having us here, and it's been really fun to kind of share our stories, and we're learning, I think, from each other. One of the Trust's main goals is to use and promote the idea of green infrastructure, green techniques to kind of augment our traditional infrastructure to accomplish multiple goals at once, which you mentioned earlier, the sort of win-win. So we're aiming for more of a win-win-win, where we can accomplish the infrastructure needs that we have with the jobs piece, but also with an environmental focus. If we have to get certain infrastructure projects done, let's figure out a way to do them, but also have a positive environmental impact at the same time. The Recovery Act funds allowed us to demonstrate a couple of different of those green infrastructure techniques. The first is a technique called living shorelines that we work on with our NOAA partners, and the second is this green streets idea that we work on with our EPA partners. The challenge that you referred to, one of the major challenges really, is to figure out a way to demonstrate the value, the win-win-win value of these techniques to the communities in which we're building these new infrastructure techniques or using them. In the case of the Edmonston project, really, it was Mayor Adam Ortiz, the mayor at the time in the tiny town of Edmonston, who took the lead on demonstrating the value of this to his community. The idea that these green infrastructure techniques make sense from a financial perspective, from a social perspective, from an aesthetic perspective. These green streets make communities more livable. They improve value to business. They improve stormwater. So in this case, the idea of partnerships, a lot of different folks played a role in making sure that these ideas have been demonstrated and sort of proven to folks around, in our case, the state of Maryland, but now in a broader sense than that.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I couldn't agree more. I think there is that third win category of jobs, community impact in terms of building things that are necessary and useful to our communities, but also the opportunity to do things in a more environmentally sustainable way. There really was in the Recovery Act and looking forward in terms of the priority of infrastructure investment, those three dimensions, and there may be more. There's just a lot of positives that flow out of it. And again, in all three of the cases we've gone over so far, and the additional three, it's amazing when the projects are done right, how these benefits can come together and tell a really important story. Let's turn to Mayor Dave Norris. As mayor, you know the importance of and the challenge in prioritizing budgets and balancing your budgets, while at the same time creating jobs and providing the vital resources to your constituents. West Monroe, the town for which you're mayor, used recovery funds to maintain a sustainable water source. And we believe in looking at that project is a good example of how to strike that balance. Can you talk a little bit about the project and how you were able to create a lasting water source in an effective way?
Sure. I've been a mayor a long time, almost 34 years. I was a college professor before that, and I taught economics, so I'm used to looking at a crowd of people and see their eyes glaze over. My newest topic is wastewater, so those that haven't glazed over already, this will do it. We were faced, or are faced in our community with a problem that has pretty regional impact. In North Louisiana, where I live, in our city of about 13,000, there are 14 parishes. We call counties parishes. And there are 14 parishes that are impacted by underground source of drinking water, our main source of drinking water in all of those 14 parishes, that is declining very rapidly. And we were told by a study that was done in 2001, you've got to do something about it. You're going to lose that source of drinking water, and a lot of the communities, especially rural communities, are not close enough to another source. So the study recommended about $250 million worth of projects. We didn't have a funding source for them, so we started looking for another source. Now, I live in a town that has our largest and most important employer for really good manufacturing jobs is a paper mill, and the paper mill pulled the most out of that aquifer of any place in the 14 parish area. So rather naively, I said, you know, if we could figure a way to find an alternative source of water for the paper mill, like if we could upgrade our wastewater from our treatment plant where they could use it, I'll bet we could get them to quit using the aquifer water, and they agreed to that. This wastewater treatment plant treats wastewater for about 30,000 people, and for those of you that hear from EPA, that plant, the one that is now that's about overloaded, we built back in the early 80s with special funding from EPA for innovative technology, but we knew we had to replace it. So I decided we'll make a deal with our employer, our big employer. We'll figure a way to upgrade our wastewater to whatever standards they need. They said, fine, we need EPA primary and secondary standards of water. In other words, you need to upgrade wastewater effluent to drinking water because their paper comes in contact with food. Well, not being an economist and not an engineer, I thought, hey, that shouldn't be too big a problem. We worked on that for about 5 years, and we came up with a system that we tested for a full year. We did what really essentially is a full-scale test. We took the components of that system, which we've replicated now in this new plant 12 times. We took those components and ran that wastewater for a year, and we met EPA's primary and secondary drinking water standards for a year. So we applied for state funding, for local funding, and for federal funding through the Stimulus Act. We received right at $20 million. In total, we've built the plant. The plant started operating on a limited scale about 2 weeks ago. It's fabulous. I hate to put the water that comes out of the aquifer up next to the water that comes out of the treatment plant because the difference is so stark. The water that comes out of the treatment plant is pristine. It's going to meet, and we haven't done all the tweaking yet, but it'll meet the EPA standards for primary and secondary drinking water, and we'll be able to do it at an economical, cost-effective rate. So our goal is, by using this plant, the paper mill has agreed to take 7 million gallons a day, and that will allow them to stop using that many gallons out of the aquifer, which is about 40% of the total deficit in this whole 14 parish area. We have the capacity to go up to 10 million gallons a day, but the real winner is that we have a way to treat wastewater effluent or water from lakes, surface lakes, in a cost-effective manner to bring them up to EPA standards where they can, either through injection wells or through some substitution, be used for drinking water. So it certainly helps save jobs. It helps us not have to restrict withdrawal from the aquifer when we get it up to full scale. And of course, it protects the health of the people. So we appreciate the contribution that the federal funds made to that, which was about 30% of the total cost.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I think there's a lot of winners in that story and a lot of angles to be proud of. In particular, I think one of the things that I want to reflect on is the importance of having practical people like you at the ground, looking at these different connections, figuring out how best to use this money. You mentioned the federal government was 30% of the investment. You're blending funds in order to produce the highest possible return on investment and impact across the very dimensions that we've been describing: jobs, community impact, environmental outcomes. But again, it's the practical person at the ground who's making it happen. And there's a lot of people like Mayor Norris across the country who have similar stories to tell. Let's turn to Henry Pariah. Henry, the Staten Island Ferry Terminal Project, which is a $175 million project, will improve commuter access for 60,000 daily riders. My team has personally visited the site and seen the impact it will have on the Staten Island area. Can you talk about the partnerships that are in place for addressing this complex project and how you're engaging riders and other stakeholders along the way?
Absolutely. First, let me say how grateful I am to be receiving this recognition on behalf of the work being performed by the New York City Department of Transportation. In New York City, under Mayor Mike Bloomberg and Commissioner Sadekhan, there is a strong commitment to infrastructure. But in most of our projects, especially this one, we have the added complexity of trying to reconstruct our aging infrastructure while still maintaining essential services. It's sort of like trying to maintain a car while driving down the highway at 50 miles an hour. In this project, working with our partners in New York City Transit, we are closing one ramp to bus service at a time, keeping all the other ramps open. This way, we minimize the inconvenience to our customers. I'm proud to say that we've completed over 56% of the contract work without interrupting even one run of the 22 different bus lines that operate on 5 different ramps, one run of the Staten Island Railway, or one taxi cab or handicap van run, or the pedestrians and bicyclists that use the facility. Another partner, and part of the complexity of the project, is immediately to the north of us. We have the ballpark of the Staten Island Yankees, a single-A minor league team, and we can't do any work that impacts access to that ballpark during baseball season, which happens to be the height of the construction season. The key to all this, in my opinion, is to constantly keep the public informed. As with most of our major projects, we have a full-time community liaison assigned to the project. We are therefore in regular contact with our emergency responders, with the folks at the city's 311 line, the community boards, and elected officials, and we send out notices at least a week in advance of any service change. This is just one example, and it's a card that says, "Where's my bus?" And when we change a lane, these cards are handed out to the people on the bus, to the people in the terminal, to let them know next week you're going to be picking up your bus at a different ramp. We also have a person that staffs the phone line during every workday, so if there's any questions, there's a human being that you can talk to. We also post this information on our very popular website, on our Facebook page, and we tweet one day before any service change any of the new information. I also think the construction methodology we're using, design-build, helps also in the process because the designer and the contractor work as a team as opposed to having separate contractual relationships with the city. In addition to that, we have incentives and disincentives for which there is a financial incentive for finishing the project early, and I think that helps. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the great cooperation and partnership we have with the folks at the Federal Transit Administration. So I think it's these partnerships which help the project move so smoothly.
Thank you, Henry. There's a lot of ingredients there to success, and practical solutions and innovation seem to be permeating throughout your approach. And again, I think we all appreciate it, and I know the people of New York and Staten Island appreciate it as well. Sam Swan. Sam, the DFW Connector Project is the largest highway construction project in the Recovery Act, funded at $260 million. And I understand it's currently ahead of schedule. Can you talk about some of the innovations that you're using to move this project forward in such a timely manner?
Yes, I'll be glad to. Henry, you're a pretty hard act to follow, but I'm going to try. And I have a lot of similar experiences that I'd like to share with you that as far as innovation goes, we really started when we were actually developing the contract, which is design build, just like Henry's is. But we tried to understand the difference between price and value. Price is what you pay, but value is what you get. So it's a different mindset as far as design build. But we knew we wanted to try new things. We knew we wanted state-of-the-art ways of doing things to take that forward to other projects. So this was almost experimental for the Texas Department of Transportation. We had done it once before. But we have innovation involved in not only our public information group, where we're utilizing social media, we have a website, we're issuing web alerts if there are emergency lane closures, so we have about 200,000 vehicles a day. So we have to get that information out to the motorists so they either can plan a new route or do something a little different to make their commute a little bit easier. We're using real-time scheduling information, so that's very, very innovation as far as I'm concerned. And then we're trying to be as paperless as possible. We have a virtual plan table where all our plan drawings are electronic. We're utilizing 3D modeling, not only in design, but actually out in the construction. And a lot of our haul vehicles, we're using GPS tracking devices. And a lot of our equipment that we have is very state-of-the-art. It's very new, at least to us. And the reason for all these innovative techniques and tools, it's not about computers and gadgets. It's actually about efficiency. It's actually about accelerating the project, getting out of the way as soon as we can. We originally figured it would take about 5 years to complete the job, and it looks like we're going to complete the job if we have good weather about a year ahead of schedule. So it is definitely a success story.
Well, that's great, and I think that's the type of story that doesn't get out enough. Believe me, if you were going to be a year late, the story would get out. But the year early doesn't always make the headlines. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have in explaining the impact that our investments are happening, is that good news is hard to spread sometimes, but there's a lot going on in our local communities. Paulson, I think you wanted to add one more point on your project in response to some of the comments that were made.
Thank you, Danny. The 491 project, as I stated earlier, basically was in collaboration with the state of New Mexico. New Mexico Department of Transportation had a lot of contribution toward this project. It's a collaborative effort between our nation and the state DOT. Now, the collaborative effort involves numerous compacts and agreements with the state DOTs. In essence, what it came boiled down to is the sovereignty of our courts and the sovereignty of our laws based on the sovereignty of the state of New Mexico. As you might note, that was very time-consuming and into development of those agreements. However, the state of New Mexico contributed about $30 million worth of their own state dollars. The ERA contributed about $30 million in ERA projects, and the Navajo Nation, through its Indian Reservation Roads program, contributed $8 million for this project alone. The project itself went fairly smoothly. However, again, it was the collaborative effort between the state and the Navajo Nation that allowed this to happen. Otherwise, I don't think we've seen a project of this magnitude in Indian country. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulson. Mayor Norris, let me ask a follow-up question to you, and others can weigh in as well. We have a few more minutes left. One of the things we often hear about is the various stakeholder interests not always aligned, everyone on the same page with some of these projects, but you've got to bring everyone to the same page in order to be successful. Did you see any of that with the particular project, the wastewater project that you described, and what kind of strategies did you use to bring everyone together?
Well, of course, if you have industry that uses groundwater, for example, and the groundwater becomes scarce, somebody's going to have to use less unless you can find a way to fill the gap. That paper mill in our community, and there's another paper mill about 40 miles away that also uses some water, had done a lot of things to reduce their consumption of water, but because of the nature of the product they make, that it comes in contact with food, they had to have water of a very high quality. And in sitting down and talking with them, they had to go to their customers. They had to get FDA approval. They were willing to do that because they saw the impact that this could have on the community. And of course, when people talk about environmental issues and economic issues being in conflict with one another, there are often ways to work those out, and that was extremely important to us. We couldn't survive very well without that aquifer, but we also couldn't survive without the jobs, direct and indirect jobs that paper mill produces. It's a very innovative paper mill and creates a lot of important jobs. Incidentally, I've drunk the water. I can see better at night than I ever could before.
That's good.
It's that good.
Justin, do you want to add anything from your end on stakeholder collaboration?
Absolutely. As the mayor said, you cannot be successful in these communities if you don't involve the community. Down in New Orleans, we have a multifaceted community. And I'm proud to say that each facet of that community, and I mean the business community, I mean the political community, I mean the neighborhoods, I'm talking about the historical society, which is a very powerful group in New Orleans. They have all championed this project. They understand it. They recognize what it does for our community. And more importantly, we want to continue doing something that the city of New Orleans has been doing since the 1800s, providing viable transportation that's green. You're talking about clean energy. Streetcar projects are electric. Therefore, there are no pollutants hitting our environment, and the community loves them. And more importantly, they're fun to ride also. So I invite all of you guys, come down and ride them.
Thank you, Justin. Let me close with a couple of thoughts. One of the lessons learned that we had, one of the challenges that both Congress and the President placed on us in implementing the Recovery Act was to do so with unprecedented transparency. We were going to let the world know exactly where every dollar went. And we were charged with creating this website called recovery.gov, which has a lot of information. During the user testing, when we were getting that website up and running, and this entity that was created called the Recovery Board owned getting that up and running, they did a lot of focus group testing. And invariably, the public would come in and they would immediately try to click down on a map to their community. It was an overwhelmingly clear response that what the public wanted to know was how the dollars were being used in their community versus any other issue. There wasn't even a close second. So when you go to recovery.gov right now, you'll see that it's very map-focused in response to this reaction. But what it doesn't do, and what it can't do, is, for example, tell the story that Henry told. You can drill down into New York City and drill down, and you'll see a dot over Staten Island, and you'll hit that dot, and it'll give you some information, how much money was received, and a description of the project. It'll even tell you how many jobs were funded with the money. But you won't get a sense for the broader impacts that type of project has, not just the jobs that are created, but the traffic congestion opportunities that are there, the impact on the businesses that are surrounding the ferry terminal. It's something that takes time to understand, to communicate on, bringing these groups together. I encourage everyone to look past just that dot on the screen in seeing what's happening with federal and state and local dollars in your communities. Understand that there's good and bad with all these projects, but when practical people, like the people that are sitting at this table, are pushing to help make their communities better, when the projects are well thought out, when we can have the wins of job creation, infrastructure development, and environmental sustainability come together, there's a lot of good things that are happening in government programs and with government dollars, and we need to replicate them and figure out what's working. And so I appreciate everyone for being here today, for helping us pull back some onion layers on these projects, and I hope this is the first of many dialogues to come. Thank you.
We're just going to get repositioned here to start the second panel, so bear with us for just a second. I think that first panel was a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to the second panel. Thank you again to Danny for your leadership on this topic and your passion for this discussion. We have another special guest joining us who will be moderating the second panel. We're honored to be joined by Larry Strickling, who is an Assistant Secretary at the Department of Commerce and Administrator of the National Telecommunications Information Administration. So, Larry?
Thank you, Aaron. Well, I think we've just heard from a great set of projects, but you're now going to hear from 6 more wonderful projects. We're now going to shift a little bit and move into the area of broadband for 4 of our projects, 2 of which we funded out of the Department of Commerce, 2 of which were funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Utility Service. And then we have 2 more EPA projects to hear from. So let's get right into it. Let me just give a little background on the broadband programs of the 2 agencies. In the Recovery Act, Congress appropriated over $6 billion to try to expand broadband in underserved and unserved areas in our country. My agency, NTIA, funded about $4 billion worth of projects, and the Rural Utility Service at Agriculture funded about $2.5 billion worth of projects. At the end of last year, the projects that we funded at Commerce have already deployed more than 40,000 miles of new fiber around the country. We've connected over 6,000 hospitals, schools, and libraries to these new facilities. We've upgraded 28,000 computers in public computer centers around the country, and through our Sustainable Broadband Adoption Program, where we're encouraging people to learn about broadband and to subscribe to it, we've already got 275,000 new broadband subscribers. At RUS, their program and the grants that they're funding are going to impact 7 million people in the country, 360,000 businesses and over 30,000 acres. So you can see that these 2 programs are going to have a significant impact in moving the scale, moving the needle on expanding broadband availability and broadband adoption in this country. But let's get right to our panelists. Our focus here on innovation through infrastructure. Let me start with Don Welch from Merit Networks in Michigan. And we like Don's program so well, we gave him 2 grants. We had 2 rounds of funding, and Merit hit the ball out of the park in both of our rounds and received 2 grants. But Don, give us a summary of your project and some of the key factors for success that you've seen.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Merit has had a vision for quite a while of equal access to information regardless of where you're located throughout the state of Michigan. And it's great to have a vision. We didn't have any resources to get there. When the BTOP project came along, we thought that this would be a great opportunity, and certainly the money provided by the BTOP project helps a lot. But Merit is a nonprofit, and our mission is focused on the research and education community. So we could not go out and serve the homes and businesses. To do that, we had to not only bring in our community of the research, education, libraries, government, et cetera, but also providers who focus on the homes and businesses. It doesn't do that much good to have great access in a school if you don't have access at home, too. For example, the University of Michigan and Michigan Technical University had research sites that were doing some great research, but they were remote and didn't have connectivity. With our project now, they will be able to do data-intensive research and go after new types of grants, do new types of research, and so forth. The school districts in rural and remote areas of Michigan are having a lot of trouble with having their resources cut. And the Governor Snyder has tried to emphasize and has a major initiative for them to share services to lower their costs. If you're going to do that, you have to have a relationship with the people you're going to be sharing services with, and you need a good network to connect them up. And so in our community, we work a lot to build the relationships within the community, to get people to work together, to solve their own problems. And of course, when you get the additional infrastructure, it makes that much more return on the working together. But as I said, you need more. Up in the Upper Peninsula, there were some engineers who were going to do some maintenance on library network. And the library director said, "Oh, wait a minute, I got to tell the patrons." And the library, the engineer is like, "What? You're closed. What patrons?" And he goes, "Oh, well, they're all out in the parking lot using the wireless so that their kids can do their homework. I got to let them know that we're gonna be down." So you got to go. We have to go further, and to achieve that vision, we need to bring in private sector providers. We started off with an open call, and we had over 40 private providers who were interested. Eventually, we came down. We have 7 subrecipients on our 2 grants, and they're the ones, they're making the investments, they're taking the risks, and they are expanding their services. They're not only expanding the services that they provide, but they are expanding their service areas. So the areas are receiving more value, there's more competition, generally better for the residents of Michigan overall. A wide diversity. They're telephone companies, they're cooperatives of telephone companies, they're cable companies, they're internet service providers, and they're the ones who are taking the risk, and they're going to see some benefit. But existing companies who are not directly involved in our grant are also getting the benefits. There's a cable company in Northeast Michigan that had 5 separate service areas. And they've been operating, giving their customers internet access over just T1s. Well, with this project, we can connect those service areas so they can consolidate their head ends and give their customers things like digital TV and so forth. And now, instead of getting their internet connectivity over T1s, they're getting it getting over a fiber optic connection. We are buying infrastructure where we can from existing builds, those companies who had decided to make the investment themselves. When we come in and buy some of their infrastructure, they get a return on investment faster so that they can then reinvest in the community. So there's a lot of multiplicative effects here. So the key for us was to leverage the partnerships that we had throughout Michigan within our community and within the state, and then the funding through BTOP, and try and push that out and help Michigan and its residents move forward and succeed in the coming years.
Thank you, Don. Now, I think partnerships and collaboration are a theme we'll hear throughout the rest of this afternoon. And let me turn to Philip at the City of Worcester, Massachusetts. Tell us how partnerships played an important role in your water project there.
Well, Larry, our project consists of a 125 kilowatt solar electric array built on the roof and the ground of our water filtration plant that provides about 25 million gallons a day of clean drinking water to the people of Worcester and surrounding communities. That plant was built in 1997. That's practically brand new by most infrastructure standards. But it uses a very energy-intensive treatment process using ozone generators. And that ozone is generated using electricity. So there's a big electric demand at that plant. The history of the solar project there is really one of a great partnership, though. It began with an energy management pilot of 7 wastewater treatment plants and 7 water treatment plants undertaken by the Department of Environmental Protection in Massachusetts and its partners with the Environmental Agency's Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and EPA. That energy management pilot looked at ways of saving energy as well as green energy, renewable energy options for these treatment plants. From that, there were a number of green renewable energy ideas that were offered for Worcester's treatment plant. Unfortunately, they're all very capital intensive, and they would not have happened without stimulus money. They would have sat on the shelf collecting dust with many other reports. But the stimulus money came through and funded these projects in total. So across Massachusetts, there were 18 similar projects funded, including Worcester's. Worcester ended up with 130,000 kilowatt hours production by solar power that is being used to offset some of the electrical needs at our plant. And the city is saving about $15,000 annually as a result of that. Statewide, the solar projects at wastewater and water treatment plants generate about 5.6 million kilowatt hours of electricity and are saving collectively over $700,000. But the real key here is the partnership. This was a case where everybody wins. The federal government, which is very much interested in the renewable green energy sector and in putting people to work through the stimulus funds, got a victory here. The state government, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is trying to create a solar energy industry in Massachusetts so that that state becomes a leader in this field. Big victory for them by having all of these public sector projects done as examples of what can be done with solar energy. And for the city of Worcester, we are a green community. That is a state designation that recognizes municipalities who have a concerted effort to save energy and to use renewable energy. We are a community that is dedicated to that cause, so this fits in perfectly with our desires and needs. We're also a community with aging water infrastructure, and we're looking for ways to improve that infrastructure, whether it be drinking water, wastewater, or stormwater, and looking to improve it, but also keep our rates affordable for the citizens of the city of Worcester. So this partnership was really one about everyone getting a victory out of it. So we talked about, in the last panel, there was the win-win and then the win-win-win. So we're getting a win for the federal government, a win for the state, and a win for the city of Worcester. And it's really a model that I think should go forward with all intergovernmental relationships when we're working with the federal, state, and local governments. A partnership that recognizes and gives equal billing to local needs, local priorities, as well as state and federal priorities. That's the type of partnership that will lead this country in a great direction and one we need to advance.
Thank you, Philip. So we've heard from a state, we've heard from a city. How about if let's go deep into rural America, and we're going to go to South Dakota, and Janelle Jessen from Venture Communications. So Janelle, tell us about what the differences are that your project is creating for the citizens in your service area.
Thank you. It's truly an honor to be here. I feel like this is a recognition for Venture as a whole, not for me. So I'd like to talk about kind of what we did there. About in 2008, we acquired a small telephone company called Western Telephone Company, and we evaluated a number of different options to try to figure out how to get them broadband service and upgrade the service that they had. And in rural America, it costs a lot of money to put those investments into the ground, give those services available to the subscribers, because there's just not very many of them. Our subscriber base is sometimes 1 to 2 subscribers per square mile. So, we're a very rural part of America. Thankfully, the stimulus money arrived kind of at the right time for us to be able to utilize some of those funds to help us make that investment in that area. What it's done for rural America, broadband is vital for rural America. I might even argue sometimes more vital than for urban areas, because there's just we don't have access to a lot of different things. We have local healthcare providers, but there's no specialists, no emergency service work is a little not as available as it is in a larger area. A major healthcare facility might be 2 to 3 hours away, so it's provided options for telemedicine for some of our subscribers. When they go to those local facilities now, they can actually access the expertise and information from specialists and from other healthcare professionals in other areas. Other things that it's done for rural America is it helps with educational opportunities. Most of our local high schools offer distance learning. They don't always have the money to hire a teacher for every particular area, so foreign languages has been a particular area that's been used a lot with distance learning. Advanced placement classes to help people get into college. And then even more so on the adult side, again, the universities aren't close. They're a long ways away, so people are taking online classes and advancing their educational opportunities and getting degrees in some cases that they may not be able have been able to do otherwise. Some other things that our customers have used the broadband services for is telecommuting. A lot of our subscribers actually work for a company that's nowhere near where they live. In particular, medical transcription has been something that a lot of our subscribers have used. And helping hospitals and clinics upload their paper files that they all have rooms full of into a database or an online system. And probably more specific to where we live, there's a lot of farmers and ranchers, and a lot of the ranchers have started using broadband services for online cattle auctions, where it expands their buyers. They increase their price as a result of having more buyers available. They still have an auction. They're still there. It's there, but it's broadcast online. People can be in New York or California, and they can watch and they can bid. And like I said, it tends to increase the price that they receive because there's just more buyers bidding on their products. So, and I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities and technology advancements to come that will certainly just result in more use of the broadband services that we've put in place. Like I said, it's expensive to put that investment in the ground, and we're just relying on a stable revenue stream to be able to pay back the investments that we've already made and also continue to make investments into the future.
Very good. We'll all go home this evening and look for e-beef online. And, we also have with us the former mayor of Edmonston, Adam Ortiz. Welcome, Adam. And I know you were involved in the same project that we heard about a little bit earlier from Dr. Davis. So let me ask you that, your project rebuilding this thoroughfare in your town and turning it into a green street, how's it been received in the community? And how has the project inspired interest in some of these green issues in your town?
Thank you, Larry. And first I want to thank the administration, particularly the staff, for this recognition for my community and for our project. We're tremendously grateful. The project has been a success. I think we were wise, mentioning your comment earlier about partnerships. We couldn't have achieved what we did, I think, without leveraging partnerships. We're a very small community of about 1,400 people, smaller than a high school. We're a very working class community. We're about equal parts white, black, and Hispanic, and I like to say that we're diverse in every way except we don't have any rich people. So as a result, our tax base is pretty humble compared to...
You're fully 99%.
We are fully 99%. But we did feel a sense of responsibility. Our town straddles the Anacostia River, which is a very impaired waterway, which eventually feeds into the Chesapeake Bay. But from the get-go, our community has been very involved because we've been the victims of environmental neglect. We flooded for several years from water upstream that's that ran off of parking lots and streams and roads and ended up in our little town because we're downstream from a lot of these other communities. We were able to address that problem with help from our county government. But what we learned is that all of us, no matter where we are, have responsibility for what we build and how we live. And all of us have responsibility for spending our tax dollars as citizens. So we sat at the table and we were like, hey, you know, our roads are running, their expiration date is coming up soon and they need to be replaced, and how can we be as responsible as possible? So at the table we had tremendous representation from the community. We had environmentalists, we had planners, we had the Chesapeake Bay Trust, which has been a tremendous partner, and we had kids. A 9-year-old girl was at the table. And we said, you know, how can we do this best? How can we learn the lessons from the lessons that, of our experience? So from top to bottom, everybody had a say, and we redesigned our street, something that we take for granted every day when we get in our cars and go to work. So from the canopy overhead, we planted native large canopy trees to replace a lot of the smaller invasive trees and non-native trees. We replaced our street lights with LED, high-powered LED lights, which have turned out to save about 70% on our street lighting bills and have made a brighter, safer street so people are much more comfortable. We made ADA-compliant sidewalks, added bike lanes, because our street is a public space. It's not just a space for cars. It's something that belongs to the community, not just a vehicle as we rush to get to work every day. And importantly, based on our flooding experience, we designed the street so that 90% of the storm water that lands on the street is absorbed right in the area. It goes right into the ground like it did years ago. It doesn't go into the storm drain, it doesn't go into the gutter, and we don't send the pollution and this water to somebody else far away. We wanted to take responsibility. So having that buy-in from the community at the get-go, Larry, really a strong sense of investment among our residents. And as a ripple effect, we were able to show, with the support of the Obama administration and their help in the Recovery Act, to show that if a small working-class community like ours can take responsibility to this level, other communities can, and all communities should take such responsibility. And the Chesapeake Bay Trust, represented by Dr. Davis a little bit earlier, they've been pioneering basically a ripple effect grant program with a partnership with EPA, and also funding working class communities to transform their main streets as community spaces that are fully responsible. So I would say that the program has been received very, very well. And we have a lot of partners to thank, and I don't think I have enough time on this panel to name them all.
Thank you, Adam. Again, every one of our panelists, both in this panel and the last panel, have talked about the impacts these projects have had. And let me turn to Amber Benson from the West Virginia PCS Alliance. Tell us a little bit about how the communities that you're serving and how they've been impacted by your project.
Certainly. Let me begin by saying I'm deeply honored to be here this afternoon to discuss the Intellis Wireless Broadband Initiatives Program project. Our project would not have been successful without the hard work and commitment of many Intellis Wireless employees. Our vendors, Alcatel-Lucent, Design Telecom, and Palmetto Engineering, and the RUS team, and our field representative, Richard Jenkins. But the true beneficiaries of the grant are the citizens that live, work, and play in our project areas: Berkeley County, West Virginia, Franklin County, Pennsylvania, and Washington County, Maryland. Prior to our project completion in 2011, these communities only had access to 1X service on their mobile devices. 1X service basically limits the customer to a slow internet experience similar to dial-up. With the upgrade to 3G high-speed mobile broadband, users in the area now enjoy a much faster and application-rich experience on their mobile devices and laptop computers. Plus, the portability of mobile broadband provides an enormous advantage to the average American who spends his or her day on the go but needs community connectivity at their fingertips. For the millions of Americans who enjoy broadband service every day, it seems difficult to think back to dial-up internet service or even a complete lack of access to the internet. But many communities today suffer with this and with the lack of broadband service, which puts their population at risk of being left behind in the digital age. The citizens in Berkeley County, Washington County, and Franklin County can now keep pace with our ever-connected society. They can apply for jobs online, telecommute, distance learn, do their tax filings, online banking, etc., which are all now possible with a mobile device or laptop with our service. Hagerstown, one of the affected areas, is the fastest growing area in Maryland and often referred to as a hub city because of the convergence of Interstates 70 and 81 and many rail lines in the region. Since they serve as a commercial and industrial center for the tri-state area, it's simply unfathomable that they didn't have broadband access before. If we go over to Berkeley County in West Virginia, that's one of the nation's fastest growing counties. Close in proximity to the nation's capital, Berkeley County has been successful in attracting big business and workers commuting here. With that comes a demand of reliable broadband service to serve the growing population. With our service, now they can keep connected at home and on the go. And finally, we have Franklin County in Pennsylvania. The area is steeped in Civil War history, but it was time for residents to move into the 21st century. This community has a bountiful selection of outdoor activities, historic places, and a thriving art scene, and now it has the lifeline that broadband access provides. For those in the audience, think about what you'll do when you leave here today. You'll likely use your mobile device to check your email, maybe pay for parking in the area, watch a video your daughter posted on Facebook of your grandchild's first steps, book a flight, make dinner reservations. Perhaps your brother's been out of work and uses his broadband access to apply for jobs or financial assistance. Maybe your wife is taking classes online to finish her degree. Telecommuting for work for you 3 days a week helps cut down on your travel time to the office and reduces your carbon footprint. All of these things wouldn't be possible in a community without broadband access, simple things that we all take for granted today. On behalf of Intellis Wireless, I would like to thank the Department of Agriculture's Rural Utilities Service for providing the BIP program grant to our company. Enhancing the lives of our customers is a core value for us, and I can think of no better enhancement than to offer high-speed mobile broadband in these unserved and underserved areas.
Great. Well, thank you, Amber. And I'm sure for those folks who are still stuck in the 1800s up there in Washington County and Franklin County, at least they can use broadband to celebrate the Civil War sesquicentennial. So before I turn to our last speaker, I would just like to mention that in our grant program, Don referred to it as BTOP, which may have surprised some of you who don't know our acronyms. It stands for Broadband Technology Opportunities Program. But we have many, many worthy projects around the country, and I urge you to go on site and take a look at our website to learn more about our projects. And I would like to acknowledge two other very successful projects that are at least represented in the audience, although not on stage today, and that's Lori Sherwood and others from the Howard County project, which actually covers the entire state of Maryland, not just Howard County, and Robert Mancini, who's been leading a terrific effort here in Washington, D.C. on a major infrastructure project. But let me turn to Joe Fredoso from North Carolina, and Joe also is a double dipper in the sense that his program has earned 2 broadband grants from the Department of Commerce. We've talked a little bit about how these projects serve to prime the pump for additional investment, not creating jobs for the project itself, but then creating opportunities for other businesses. And I know that's been particularly true with your project. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you have actually been priming the pump of new investment.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry, and thank you for the recognition today, not just for me, but for the entire team at MCNC. We're very proud of this. A couple of things. We're very similar to Don, the story that you heard about Don. We are a research and education network that serves community anchor institutions in North Carolina. Our university system, our community college system, all of our local school districts, 30 nonprofit hospitals, 30 charter schools, a partridge in a pear tree, and others use our network on a daily basis for intranet and internet access. I think one of the things that we always think about is Our network is something that makes dreams reality, right? Research that happens on our network makes dreams reality. Whether that research is a genomics Nobel Prize winner at UNC Chapel Hill and Oliver Smithsey's doing research over Internet 2 with our connection to Dave Lambert, who's in the audience, and Internet 2 with a co-genomics researcher at Stanford, or whether it's a third-grade girl in a rural school district who's downloading a video to enhance her PowerPoint. We serve all those needs every day. What we found in North Carolina was as we looked out 5 years down the road for the capacity demands of those community anchor institutions, we were going to outstrip, particularly in rural North Carolina, the capacity of the networks that were in place. They were mainly copper infrastructure that needed to be replaced and upgraded to fiber. So this program gave us the great opportunity to build 2,600 miles of contiguous fiber, make a $140 million investment in broadband infrastructure in rural North Carolina, and enable those community anchor institutions to grow and thrive at pretty fixed costs over the next 20 to 25 years and meet their needs. We're talking not about 10 gig production speeds, but about 100 gig production speeds that support that research, that support that learning, that support job creation in North Carolina. Larry's question was around what are the immediate effects and then what are the long-term effects. The immediate effects are obviously that we have 40 crews of 10 to 20 people working on installing fiber every day out in the field. Rick Johnson's here from CommScope that supplies fiber, conduit, and all the outside plant materials to both Don's project and my project. CommScope is a great Hickory, North Carolina company that we're very proud of, but Rick was just telling me beforehand that a conduit plant that was basically idled before the Deep BTOP program is now at full capacity. So those immediate impacts happen. People are back at work. They're supplying materials to us. What happens in the future? Well, I'll share one story with you. Larry came with us and attended a groundbreaking ceremony we had for the Round 2 Award in August. And we sat at a place called Kannapolis, North Carolina. Kannapolis, North Carolina was the site of the largest layoff in 2003 in North Carolina history. Pilotex lost 3,000 employees in one day. On that site, David Murdoch, who was a senior officer at Pilotex at that time and is now chairman and CEO of Dole Foods, has built a multi-hundred million dollar research campus that is doing research in genomics, life extension, nutrition. They didn't have fiber until our BTOP award. The fiber that we will supply them will allow great research equipment, one-of-a-kind research equipment that exists in Kannapolis, North Carolina, to be utilized in the wide area, across states, across the country, around the world. It's created jobs in Kannapolis. There's a community college program that has been enabled that is training lab assistants to operate this gear. This is about dreaming big. You know, today when we start to look at, and Amber put it well, when you start to look at our speeds and feeds today that we think about, even our standards that we have today from the FCC, we're going to look at those standards in 5 years like dial-up. When we start to talk about enabling healthcare online so that a patient doesn't have to move at health risk from their home to a hospital to get diagnosed or get evaluated every 3 or 4 months, you need a broadband connection to enable that patient to interface with their doctor, to manage their vitals and monitor their vitals. And we need to start thinking about these things. So I think when you look at Don and mine's statewide projects, it's about scaling to the future, which is exactly the type of investments that we should be making today. It's about enabling healthcare. It's about economic development. In North Carolina, 30% of our homes have home-based businesses, and they're going to grow online. It's about getting this technology that we're putting in into the last mile by public-private partnership. So Larry, I think when you look at the immediate term impacts of creating jobs, the 1,200 or so I think are minuscule of what the long-term impact of this is going to be on the economic vitality and the health of our nation.
Great, and I think that's a great place to end our panel. So please join me in thanking our panelists. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce my friend and colleague, Jonathan Adelstein, the Administrator of the Rural Utilities Service, for some closing remarks. Jonathan.
Well, thank you, Larry. What a great panel, what a great set of awardees we have here today. It's wonderful to to be with you all, and a great privilege to be with such leaders. They really are an inspiration. They didn't get here easily. It wasn't easy to get that first grant under the Recovery Act. These were extremely competitive. A lot of folks were looking for these projects, and they were very carefully selected. And I think, to pat ourselves on the back, Larry and I did a pretty good job based on these folks. But even after that step, they took another step to become the champions of change, to represent the best of the best in terms of what they do. And they are the ones who made it happen. We were fortunate enough to be in a position to recognize your great talent, but you are the ones who are changing and transforming your communities. You're the ones who are making the vision a reality. They seem very humble here today, but they really have made great accomplishments. I'd like another round of applause for our champions of change. Good job. Larry and I worked very closely hand in hand throughout this process, and as I think about it, we're so close to President's Day. I'm an historian by training. It's hard not to think of President Obama's favorite president, President Lincoln, who on occasion like this once said, "I know of nothing so pleasant to the mind as the discovery of anything which is once new and valuable." Each one of our partners here, our champions, certainly have brought something new and valuable to our nation. They have really represented the best of our country. They embodied the President's challenge to win the future. They have created an America that's built to last. Your stories, we've heard about ingenuity today. We've heard about a lot of hard work it took to make these happen. They took a lot of ingenuity to figure out how to make it happen, all these great different ideas, but then to actually bring them into reality, to create the community involvement that it took, to strengthen your community's infrastructure. It's really something that inspires my confidence in our future and our ability to continue to expand on this economic recovery which is underway. And it's really a can-do America that we've heard from all of our champions of change here today. And there's a real vision, I think we heard, behind the Recovery Act that's embodied in these champions, a broader vision that, like President Lincoln, President Obama understands that we are one nation, that we are one economy that must be strong in all regions, from rural to urban, we heard on this panel and on the other, from north to south and east to west. In embracing a real national infrastructure strategy, the President crafted an economic plan that brought the nation back from the brink to this recovery we're seeing today. He focused on opportunities to create jobs immediately as these systems are being built. We heard about the people's lives who were uplifted by building these, and jobs to follow when they come online, and jobs as these systems are built, and certainly many more jobs into the future as these new networks become the platforms for innovation and job creation for years to come. Citizens and communities and businesses alike are going to use these networks for transportation, for telecommunications, for water and environmental improvements, for efficient energy delivery technologies, to create new and sustainable economic opportunities. So our champions of change are the real spark plugs of this engine of economic growth. I think you're worthy of our thanks for moving America into high gear. You saw the Super Bowl, we all saw Clint Eastwood. I think he was right when he said, the world's going to hear the roar of our engines. We're just getting revved up here. And of course, like a proud father, I'm especially thrilled about today's two RUS Broadband Initiatives program participants that come, one from my home state of South Dakota. It's hard not to think of folks like that, Venture Communications and your whole team, my good friend Randy Hodek, who works there, really bringing world-class broadband to Highmore, South Dakota. The broadband there is going to be as good as it is anywhere in downtown Manhattan, here in D.C., and that's the way it should be. That's what the Communications Act says, comparable service at comparable price no matter where you are. And in West Virginia, the PCS Alliance, Amber Benson talked about, is going to bring a quality of wireless service that's second to none. That is the equivalent of what you get here in these greatest cities and largest cities in the country to the hardest to serve areas of West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. They are, and so many more, are bringing really leadership that we need. And all of it has one thing in common. As I sort of think about the themes of today, the one theme is connection. Our nation's great because we value our connections to each other, to our environment, to our health, to our future, rural and urban, whether it's a road or a power line, whether it's a water main or a strand of fiber. These connections tie our citizens together into a more perfect union. You heard a lot today about our aging infrastructure. President Obama has recognized that it's time to upgrade America's aging infrastructure. Many of our electric lines, our telecommunications lines, and our pipelines that carry not only water but hazardous materials and energy sources were installed, over half of them, before 1970, and many much earlier. My agency itself has replaced some water lines that are old wood pipes that are nearly a century old. Well, it was our ancestors that built those networks. It was our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and fathers that were involved in building out that infrastructure, and it was well built. We're still using it today. But even that excellent and important infrastructure doesn't last forever. It wears out. We have always seen ourselves as a world leader in new technologies and infrastructure, and the U.S. now finds itself in need of new investment, investments that this administration is making, investments that these champions are building out. We can't always rely on the massive investments that our forebears made 50 or 100 years ago. Those systems lasted a long time, but today's champions are building the systems that our children and our grandchildren will use. I think that our children and grandchildren look back and they'll thank us in some room like this someday saying, they built some great systems, but time to rebuild them again. But I know that the quality of work that these folks are doing, the kind of engineering they're putting into it, the kind of thought they're putting into it, the kind of detail and the kind of hard work and the kind of resources are truly building a foundation for the future, and these systems are built to last. So we bring this program to a close. I want to carry today's inspiration forward. We want to keep this momentum going. There's a long way to go on repairing our nation's infrastructure. We've heard some great inspirational stories. There's a lot more to go. So to quote again President Lincoln, let us strive on to finish the work we are in. Thank you all for coming. I thank our champions for coming far and wide from all across America to be with us here today, at their own expense, I might add, and we thank you for that. And to all of their teams back home. I know that all of you said today it was really your team that were the ones that propelled you here into the White House today. We want to thank all of you. We want to thank your teams. We want to thank all of you who are here today. Thanks for coming to D.C., and congratulations to all of our champions.
Thank you, Jonathan. I wanted to close it out by simply thanking Jonathan, thank you to Larry, and thank you to our earlier speakers for helping us today, moderating these discussions. But I most of all wanted to thank our champions again for all their great work and their continued great work, hopefully, and telling their story. Again, if you want to learn more about our champions that were here on the second panel or our earlier champions, go to www.whitehouse.gov/champions. You can learn more about them, read their blogs about the work that they're doing, and we hope to stay in touch with them and hear continued great work. And now I want to also mention another thank you to all of our partners that made this happen. You might have seen a trend with our speakers. We had a speaker from each of the agencies that nominated our champions, from the Department of Transportation, the EPA, NTIA with the Department of Commerce, and RUS with the Department of Agriculture. So I want to thank them for all their work and all of our other partners with the Recovery Act. But I just want to close it out by one more final round of applause for our champions, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you.